Welcome to the History AI podcast, where the past comes alive with facts, anecdotes, and a dash of humor. Here are your hosts, Chuck and Marco.
Welcome back to the History AI podcast, everyone. I'm Chuck.
And I'm Marco. Thanks for tuning in today. We've got a fantastic episode lined up about one of the most pivotal battles in American history, the Battle of Saratoga.
That's right, Marco. This battle didn't just change the course of the American Revolutionary War, it changed the destiny of a nation. But before we dive into the details, remember, if you enjoy the show, please rate, subscribe, and share with your friends. Every 5-star review helps us reach more history buffs like you.
Absolutely, Chuck. And don't forget, we've got some cool History AI podcast merchandise available now. Check out the link in the show notes to grab yours. And as a thank you to our listeners, we're offering a 10% discount on your first purchase. Just use the code The History AI Podcast, all one word, at checkout. All right, let's get into it. Let's turn back the clock and picture the world in the 1770s. The American colonies are a patchwork of growing discontent and revolutionary fervor. Taxation without proper representation in British Parliament had brewed a storm of resistance across the colonies.
Exactly, Marco. And it wasn't just about taxes. The colonies were bristling under British laws that stifled their economic growth and political autonomy. Events like the Boston Massacre in 1770 and the Boston Tea Party in 1773 had already set the stage for an open conflict.
Across the Atlantic, Europe is watching keenly. The American struggle is not just a local rebellion, it's a chess piece in the global power dynamics. France, in particular, still smarting from its loss in the 7 Years' War, sees a potential ally in the rebellious colonies against their common adversary, Britain.
That's right. So here we are in 1777. The war has been raging for 2 years, with battles from Massachusetts to South Carolina. The British have a new plan, conceived by General John Burgoyne, known as the Saratoga Campaign. His objective? To divide and conquer, slicing through New York to isolate New England from the southern colonies.
The strategic importance of New York can't be overstated. It's the lifeline for communications and logistics between the colonies. By controlling it, the British hoped to quell the uprising in a decisive blow. On the ground at Saratoga, the conflict brought together a colourful cast of military figures and fighting men. Leading the British was General John Burgoyne, nicknamed Gentleman Johnny for his flair and ambitious military strategies. Burgoyne was confident, planning a 3-pronged attack that would slice through New York and sever New England from the rest of the colonies.
His forces were a mixed bag of regulars, Hessians, Native American allies, and British loyalists. Burgoyne's plan hinged on precise coordination and clear lines of communication, all of which would soon be challenged.
On the American side, the command fell to General Horatio Gates, a former British soldier turned American general. Gates was cautious and somewhat politically savvy, often clashing with his more aggressive subordinate, the fiery and fearless Benedict Arnold.
And let's not forget about Daniel Morgan and his rifleman Marco. Morgan was a tough frontier man, known for his sharpshooting skills. His corps of elite marksmen was tasked with a critical role, eliminating British scouts and officers. By picking off the British guides, Morgan's men effectively blinded Burgoyne's forces, disrupting their navigation through the dense, unfamiliar American terrain.
That's right, Chuck. The presence of Morgan's sharpshooters threw a wrench in the British strategy. Their ability to target key personnel from a distance meant that the British were often left without crucial leadership at pivotal moments.
It's also worth noting the contributions of figures like Tadeusz Kosciuszko, who engineered the fortifications that made the American positions so formidable. These fortifications turned Saratoga into a deadly trap for the British, who found themselves attacking well-prepared defenses head-on.
The stage was set, Chuck. With these leaders and their unique strengths and tactics, the battles of Saratoga would prove to be a dramatic showdown of strategy, courage, and resilience.
The Battle of Saratoga is actually a tale of 2 crucial encounters. Let's start with the first clash, the Battle of Freeman's Farm, which occurred on September 19, 1777. Burgoyne, pushing southward, intended to seize control of the Hudson River Valley. But the terrain and the stubborn American defense would prove more formidable than he anticipated.
That's right, Chuck. The Americans, under General Horatio Gates, had fortified their positions on Bemis Heights, commanding views and fields of fire that covered the approaches. As the British moved in, they were met by Daniel Morgan's riflemen, who used the dense woodland to their advantage, targeting officers and causing disarray in the British ranks.
Despite the chaos, the British troops pressed on, leading to a fierce confrontation at Freeman's Farm. It was a bloody affair with significant casualties on both sides. The British managed to hold their ground, but at a steep cost. They couldn't dislodge the Americans, who fell back to their strong defensive lines, ready to fight another day.
Fast forward to October 7th, and we arrive at the second engagement, the Battle of Bemis Heights. With his forces weakened from the first battle and supply lines stretched perilously thin, Burgoyne made a desperate attempt to break through the American lines.
And once again, the American forces were ready. This time, Benedict Arnold, despite being relieved of command due to a fallout with Gates, took to the field in a dramatic fashion. Seeing a critical moment during the battle, Arnold rode into the fray, rallying the troops and leading a charge against the British redoubts.
Arnold's boldness turned the tide. His troops captured a key strongpoint, and the British found themselves outflanked and overwhelmed. Panic set in among the British ranks, and their defensive structure crumbled.
The Americans seized the moment, capturing or killing a significant number of British soldiers. Burgoyne was left with no choice but to retreat to Saratoga, where he eventually found his army surrounded, without hope of relief.
On October 17th, faced with the complete encirclement of his forces and deteriorating conditions, Burgoyne surrendered to General Gates. This surrender marked a pivotal moment in the war, demonstrating the resolve and capability of the Continental Army.
These battles showcased not just military might but also strategic acumen, from the use of terrain by the Americans to the misjudgments by the British command. It was a combination of courage, strategy, and a bit of luck that led to this monumental American victory.
The Battle of Saratoga is filled with tales of heroism and strategic masterstrokes. Let's talk about some of the standout heroes and the tactics that defined this crucial confrontation.
First up, Benedict Arnold. Despite being sidelined due to a conflict with Gates, Arnold couldn't stay behind when he saw the battle unfolding. Ignoring orders, he threw himself into the heart of the fight during the Battle of Bemis Heights. His leadership and bravery were instrumental in turning the tide, especially in the assault on Bremen's redoubt, which proved to be a critical point in the American victory.
Arnold's audacity on the battlefield inspired his men to push harder and fight with renewed vigor. It's these moments of personal bravery that can shift the outcome of battles, and Arnold's actions that day certainly did.
Then there's Daniel Morgan, whose sharpshooters were pivotal throughout the campaign. Morgan's tactics were revolutionary. His riflemen, skilled in frontier warfare, were deployed as skirmishers who harried the British advance and picked off officers, significantly disrupting British command and control.
Absolutely, Chuck. Morgan understood the value of targeted strikes and psychological warfare. By eliminating key leaders, his men sapped the morale of British troops and created chaos within their ranks.
And let's not forget the tactical use of terrain. Gates and his engineer, Tadeusz Kosciuszko, meticulously chose the ground on which to make their stand at Bemis Heights. They constructed fortified positions that maximized their defensive capabilities and forced the British into unfavorable assault positions.
These fortifications were a nightmare for Burgoyne's men, who were compelled to attack uphill against well-entrenched defenders. It was a classic example of how understanding and utilizing the landscape can provide a decisive advantage in battle.
The Americans also excelled in the use of intelligence and misinformation. Spies and scouts provided Gates with crucial information about Burgoyne's movements and strength, allowing the Americans to anticipate and prepare for the British attacks.
Every one of these elements, heroic figures, tactical innovation, and strategic terrain usage, came together to form a comprehensive victory at Saratoga. It wasn't just a battle won, it was a statement made, signaling the emergence of the Continental Army as a formidable force capable of defeating the vaunted British Army in a major engagement.
And that, listeners, is how tactics, terrain, and tenacity turned Saratoga into one of the most celebrated American victories in the Revolutionary War.
The significance of the Battle of Saratoga extends far beyond the immediate tactical victories. It was a turning point that had profound implications for the American Revolution and the future of the United States.
Absolutely, Marco. One of the most immediate impacts was the boost in morale across the American colonies. The victory proved to the Continental forces and the general populace that the British Army, considered the best in the world at that time, could be defeated. This was a huge lift for the colonial cause, which at times had seemed nearly hopeless.
And then there's the international angle. The victory at Saratoga was pivotal in shifting the global dynamics of the war. It served as the critical proof France needed to throw its full support behind the American cause. Shortly after the battle, in 1778, France signed an alliance with the Americans, followed by Spain and the Dutch Republic, turning what had been a colonial rebellion into a global conflict.
That's right, Marco. French involvement brought fresh supplies, troops, and, crucially, the French Navy, which would later play a key role in trapping the British at Yorktown, leading to the end of the war. This international support can be traced directly back to the success at Saratoga.
On the British side, the defeat forced a reconsideration of their strategy in the colonies. There was political fallout too, with critics of the war gaining a stronger voice in Parliament, arguing that the conflict was unwinnable and too costly. This defeat began to sway British public opinion, which was essential for peace talks later on.
Economically, the victory also helped the American cause by bolstering the confidence of potential financial backers, both domestic and international. Funding the war effort was a constant struggle for the Continental Congress, and successes like Saratoga helped open the purses of supporters.
The repercussions of Saratoga resonated on multiple levels, boosting morale, securing essential international alliances, influencing British political and military strategy, and stabilizing American financial support.
Indeed, Marco. The Battle of Saratoga wasn't just a military victory, it was a watershed moment that altered the course of the war and, ultimately, the fate of a nation.
The Battle of Saratoga not only marked a turning point in the American Revolutionary War, but also left a lasting legacy on military tactics, colonial morale, and the evolution of warfare. Let's delve into these aspects, starting with the casualties.
Indeed, Marco. The battle was costly for both sides, but particularly devastating for the British. Of Burgoyne's expeditionary force of approximately 7,000 men, around 1,000 were killed or wounded, and an additional 5,800 were captured when Burgoyne surrendered. The American casualties were significantly lower, with about 500 killed and wounded.
These losses were not just numbers, they represented experienced officers and soldiers whose absence would be deeply felt in subsequent British campaigns. The high rate of casualties among the British also starkly contrasted with previous conflicts, signaling a change in the ferocity and determination of the engagements.
Speaking of change, Saratoga also showcased a shift in the style of warfare. The use of rifles, especially by American sharpshooters like those led by Daniel Morgan, introduced a new element to the battlefield. These rifles, more accurate and with a longer range than the muskets typically used by the British, allowed the Americans to target officers and disrupt British command structures effectively.
Absolutely, Chuck. The psychological impact of this precision targeting cannot be overstated. It instilled fear and confusion within the British ranks and demonstrated the effectiveness of marksmen in shaping the outcome of battles. This use of rifles heralded a shift towards more open and flexible tactics in military engagements.
And let's not forget about the impact on colonial morale. The victory at Saratoga gave the colonists a tangible belief in their cause and their capability to achieve independence. It was a morale booster that echoed through the colonies, rejuvenating the resolve of soldiers and civilians alike.
This belief was crucial, Chuck. It transformed the revolutionary spirit from a desperate struggle for survival into a confident push for victory. The success at Saratoga proved to the colonists and the world that they could hold their own against the might of the British Empire.
In every sense, the aftermath of Saratoga reshaped the American Revolutionary War. It changed military tactics, bolstered colonial morale, and altered the strategic calculations of both the British and the international community. This battle didn't just win a fight, it changed the nature of the fight.
Well said, Chuck. Saratoga stands as a testament to the resilience and ingenuity of the American forces, and its legacy continues to be studied and admired in military and historical circles around the world. Well, folks, that wraps up another episode of the History AI podcast. We hope you've enjoyed our dive into the Battle of Saratoga and found some inspiration in the stories of strategy, courage, and innovation that have shaped our history.
If you liked what you heard today, don't just keep it to yourself. Share this episode with friends, family, or anyone you know who loves a good historical tale. And if you're listening on a platform where you can rate or review us, please give us those 5 stars. It really helps us reach more listeners just like you.
Yes, your shares and reviews are like the drumbeats in the battle. They rally more folks to our cause and help this community grow. Plus, remember to check out our merchandise through the link in the show notes. It's a great way to support the podcast and get some cool gear at the same time.
And we're always looking to hear from you. Suggest new topics for us to explore on our social media pages. We love diving into history that you're passionate about, so don't be shy. Let us know what you want to hear next.
Every episode we create is designed to be timeless, just like the stories we tell. So whether you're listening today or years from now, we're glad you chose to join us.
Thank you for lending us your ears and your time. Until next time, I'm Chuck.
And I'm Marco. Keep the past present, everyone. Stay curious, keep exploring, and remember, history isn't just about the past, it's about understanding the world we live in today. Thanks for listening, and see you in the next episode.
Looking for the perfect way to show appreciation for the incredible mom in your life? Discover Exhausted Moms, a coloring journey to relaxation and humor, the coloring book that speaks directly to the heart of motherhood. Gift her an escape into pages of laughter, empowerment, and moments of tranquility. With Exhausted Moms, she'll find a blend of whimsical illustrations and inspiring quotes that celebrate her daily triumphs and challenges. Crafted with love from images I created for the mother of my children, each page offers a space for creativity and relaxation, a reminder that she's doing an amazing job, even on the toughest days. Give the gift of laughter, peace, and recognition. Exhausted Moms isn't just a coloring book, it's a hug, a nod of understanding, and a token of appreciation for everything she does. Surprise her with Exhausted Moms today and watch her face light up with joy. Because every mom deserves a moment to herself, wrapped in the colors of love and support.